Eala. Like,
oh my gosh.
She is already popular as it is, and now she's having a Wimbledon moment. And there is something I think about Wimbledon and the US Open to some extent, but players doing well at Wimbledon, it just takes you to another level. And
rocket ship.
Just rocket ship. And she won her match today against Iga Swiatek, a match that I thought for sure she had a chance to win. And I wanted to ask you, because I think for some people anyway, it seems like this...
Supposedly, there was 11 million people in the Philippines that watched that match. I mean, which are astronomical numbers. I've also read that she's got her own pink line of clothes coming out, and her rating for Nike was like a 5-star rating for like in her contract with these sorts of results. So she's box office, she's polite, she's a great tennis player, and wherever you go in the world, it doesn't matter if you're in Indian Wells, if you're in Wimbledon, in your Paris, you know, it's almost like they're in love with her and they're just dedicated to her career and love
on grass. I'm like, guys, last year we were talking about how she could possibly beat Barbara Krejcikova. Did everyone forget what happened last year?
It's so striking to see how she and Eva Jovic, who I kind of always group them together because they're besties, are so confident on grass. And we're seeing right now this kind of top of the WTA tour that is really not confident on grass. We have this kind of generation of players who've been recently dominated.
I didn't think I'd be making this many videos about women's tennis at Wimbledon, but once I researched Alex Eala's story, I couldn't resist this one. If you don't already know the name of Alex Eala, get ready, because she is the first Filipino tennis player to make it through to the third round of a Grand Slam's singles tournament at Wimbledon. But that isn't the best thing about her story. In August last year, Eala wore a t-shirt designed by Manila-based designer Georgina Camus, which featured the national flower of the Philippines, the sun.
Even Federer had to pull up to watch Eala. That's how phenomenal she has been over this last week and a bit. But Eala's run is done. She is out of Wimbledon. She showed fight, she showed grit, she showed determination. But today was just the beginning of something special. Big shout out to Jasmine Balolini, who's into another quarterfinal at Wimbledon. She beat Eala in 3 unbelievable sets of tennis, with momentum going back and forth, and she...
Wimbledon 2026 just experienced something that shouldn't have been possible. A single player's exit from a tournament didn't just disappoint fans, it fundamentally altered the event's entire atmosphere. Within hours of one 21-year-old's defeat, social media exploded with screenshots of ticket prices plummeting. Center court, which had been roaring with energy days earlier, suddenly felt quieter. The women's final was played. Deserving champion was crowned, but everyone was still talking about someone who was no longer there. That player's name was Alex Eala, and her departure from Wimbledon revealed something the tennis world had been ignoring for years. One player can completely change how a major tournament feels, not just to insiders, but to millions of casual viewers watching around the world. Welcome to Baseline TV. If you're passionate about tennis stories that go beyond the scoreboard, hit subscribe and like this video, because we're about to unpack how a 21-year-old from Manila accidentally became the biggest attraction at Wimbledon. Let's go. Alex Eala was supposed to be famous yet. When she arrived at the All England club, she was a promising junior prospect still building her professional resume. Philippines had never produced a tennis player of genuine global significance, and that historical gap mattered. For generations, Filipino sports fans had to root for stars from other nations because their own country simply hadn't developed that kind of talent in tennis. But this year felt different. There was momentum building around Eala that couldn't be ignored. She'd already beaten multiple top-ranked players in preparation. She had junior credentials that suggested something special was developing. And most importantly, she had an entire nation watching, waiting to see if this could finally be the moment their country broke through. The story of how Eala got to Wimbledon is actually the story of how you become a genuine global star. It starts with small victories that build credentials, then moves to beating players you're not supposed to beat. For Eala, that breakthrough came against Iga Swiatek, the defending Wimbledon champion. Swiatek is not just any player. She's a multiple Grand Slam winner, a world-class champion who had already proven she could win on grass, the surface where Eala was supposed to be weakest at this stage of her career. But Eala came out with a confidence that surprised everyone watching. She didn't play like a 21-year-old trying to prove herself. She played like someone who belonged there. She captured a tiebreak in the first set with ice in her veins, then completely took over the second set. Swiatek was struggling. The reigning champion was losing to someone from the Philippines no one had been talking about weeks earlier. What happened in that match transcended tennis. When Alex Eala beat Iga Swiatek, something shifted in the global conversation about women's tennis. Highlight videos exploded across social media almost instantly. Wimbledon's official accounts pushed clips everywhere. Casual sports fans who never watched tennis suddenly found themselves asking, "Who is this player?" Filipino communities around the world treated every single point like a national celebration. Match became the emotional heartbeat of the entire tournament. This wasn't just another upset. This was a moment where a new star arrived on the world's biggest stage and announced herself in a way that even the most seasoned analysts didn't see coming. Every major sports network started covering Eala. Every newspaper was writing about her background. Even legendary players like Roger Federer pulled up to watch her play. That's how rare and special this moment had become. Nearly a week, Eala became the center of the tennis universe in a way that only happens once every few years. Journalists stopped asking about tournament favorites and started asking about her story. Where did she come from? How did she train? What makes her play with this kind of fearlessness? The curiosity was genuine because what she was doing had never happened before from a Filipino player. She wasn't just competing, she was capturing imagination. One report claimed 11 million people in the Philippines watched her match against Swiatek. Think about that number. 11 million people in a single country staying awake through impossible time zones to watch tennis on the grass courts of London. That's not normal. That's what happens when you found a player that an entire nation sees itself in. Social media was flooded with messages from fans who normally ignored women's tennis suddenly treating Eala like she was a generational talent. Because honestly, they might have been right. Then Jasmine Paolini happened. In the next round, Eala faced a different kind of opponent. Paolini is an elite player with her own title-winning credentials, and she simply played the better match over 3 competitive sets. Eala showed fight and grit. That's the nature of tennis at this level. Someone always loses, and on this particular day it was Eala's turn. The loss itself wasn't dramatic or filled with controversy. There was no heated argument with the umpire. There was no injury that overshadowed the result. Paolini just won 3 good sets of tennis against a rising opponent. It should have been the end of the story. One promising young player had a great run at Wimbledon and came up just short. These things happen every single year at every major tournament. Except this time, something entirely unexpected occurred in the hours and days after her elimination. Within hours of Eala's defeat, social media exploded with discussion about ticket prices. Screenshots started circulating showing center court resale prices dropping dramatically. Whether every single screenshot reflected exact market data almost became irrelevant because the internet had latched onto the larger truth. Fans believed something fundamental had disappeared from the tournament the moment Eala packed her bags. Sporting events always see fluctuations depending on schedules and matchups, but this felt different. The energy surrounding the women's tournament seemed to evaporate almost overnight. Just 48 hours earlier, center court had delivered one of its loudest ovations of the entire fortnight. But now, without Eala in the draw, the atmosphere shifted noticeably. It wasn't just a matter of one upset or one player leaving. The entire tournament suddenly felt less urgent for casual viewers. The remarkable part was the scale of this realization. Wimbledon, the tournament that has always claimed it's bigger than any single player, discovered it might have been wrong. For generations, tennis has proudly stated that the tournament exists independent of any one competitor. Championships are eternal. Players come and go. But 2026 produced a fascinating contradiction to that narrative. When both Gauff and Eala exited the draw, the women's final lost 2 of its biggest commercial attractions. One was a perennial top-ranked American star that sponsors fight over. The other was a rising talent that had just captured an entire nation's attention. Losing both created a vacuum that proved impossible to ignore. The women's final still crowned a deserving champion in Linda Noskova. But the path to that final had been dramatically altered by the absence of players the audience genuinely wanted to watch. The most telling part of this story is what didn't happen. There was no manufactured drama, no interviews where players complained about conditions or made excuses. This was purely about viewer engagement and commercial interest responding to the absence of someone who had captured global attention. Every additional victory Eala had earned expanded her audience. Every deep tournament run introduced millions of new fans. Tournament directors preparing for the North American hard court swing understood exactly what her presence meant. Television executives understood it. Sponsors certainly understood it. Her appearance on the court moved ratings. Her matches generated engagement. Her story inspired people who had never cared about tennis before to suddenly stay awake through impossible hours. What made Eala's impact even more significant was how she handled the disappointment afterward. Rather than searching for excuses or dwelling on one disappointing afternoon, she focused on improvements that still needed to happen. Hall of Famer Martina Navratilova publicly praised her competitiveness throughout the tournament while pointing out specific technical areas that still required refinement, particularly on her serve. That level of investment from a legend only happens when a player's future appears incredibly bright. If Eala can already defeat defending major champions while still possessing obvious technical room for growth, her ceiling may be significantly higher than anyone predicted just months ago. She's not a one-week wonder or a Cinderella story that won't last. She's a player with genuine technical foundation and the mental toughness to improve. Earlier during Wimbledon, Eala shared a message on social media about resilience, explaining that athletes do not need to win every match to inspire others. She wrote that pressure creates stronger people and that difficult moments often prepare individuals for even greater opportunities. Reading those words after her elimination gave them unexpected significance. It sounded less like motivational content and more like someone quietly preparing herself for the next chapter before the current one had even ended. That perspective may prove invaluable as expectations continue growing, because they absolutely are growing. Fans are no longer hoping she simply wins a match or two. Many genuinely believe she can challenge the world's elite on the biggest stages. That's an entirely different level of pressure. But it's also the type of pressure reserved for players capable of transforming a sport's popularity. The commercial infrastructure around tennis is already responding to what Wimbledon revealed. Reports indicate she's already got her own line of pink clothing coming out. Her Nike contract ratings spiked to 5-star levels after these results. Wherever you go in the world, from Indian Wells to Wimbledon to Paris, fans are almost in love with her and dedicated to her career. This isn't about nostalgia for a forgotten player. This is about building a global fan base that will follow her from tournament to tournament. The WTA has been searching for years to find the next generation of stars capable of attracting entirely new audiences instead of just inheriting existing ones. That kind of connection cannot be measured solely by rankings or prize money, because it creates something far more valuable: long-term fans. Eala is creating that right now. Looking back, Wimbledon may ultimately remember 2026 less for the champion who lifted the Venus rosewater dish, and more for the young woman whose departure unexpectedly changed the tournament's entire atmosphere. Championships are decided by scoreboards. Sporting phenomena are decided by people. People decide which highlights they replay. People decide which matches they stay awake to watch. People decide which players inspire entire countries to dream. For one unforgettable week on the lawns of Wimbledon, Eala accomplished something that statistics alone cannot fully explain. She convinced millions of casual fans that women's tennis had suddenly become must-see entertainment. Now the spotlight moves to New York, where the US Open presents another opportunity for tennis' fastest rising star to prove that Wimbledon was not a magical one-week exception, but simply the opening chapter of a career that could reshape the sport's future. If the excitement surrounding London is any indication, the next tournament may not just be competing for a Grand Slam champion. It may also be competing for the attention of millions of fans who have already decided that wherever Eala plays next is where the real story begins. The expectations will be higher. The pressure will be more intense. But she's already shown she can handle that environment by defeating a defending major champion on one of the biggest stages tennis has to offer. There's a crucial lesson here for the WTA as a whole, one that the entire sport needs to understand. For years, tennis has searched for the next generation of stars capable of attracting entirely new audiences instead of simply inheriting existing ones. That kind of connection cannot be forced through sponsorship deals or forced narratives. It either exists or it doesn't. With Eala, it exists in a way that even industry insiders didn't predict 6 months ago. If she continues progressing at this pace, the discussion surrounding her will soon move beyond surprising upsets and Cinderella stories. The focus will shift toward major titles, global endorsements, and whether she can become one of the defining faces of women's tennis. Judging by the reaction Wimbledon experienced after her exit, that future may arrive much sooner than anyone expected. The biggest stars are not simply remembered for the matches they win. They are remembered for how different the sport feels whenever they are no longer there. When Eala walked out of Wimbledon after her loss to Paolini, she left behind something that can't be easily quantified in statistics or rankings. She left behind the sense that women's tennis had suddenly become essential viewing. She left behind millions of fans who had never cared about the sport before and were now fully invested in her journey. She left behind a tournament that felt noticeably quieter and less urgent without her presence. And most importantly, she left behind the undeniable proof that one player, at the right moment in the right place, can transform how the entire world sees a sport. That's the power of a genuine star, and the tennis world is just beginning to realize what it discovered at Wimbledon 2026.